So we've talked about vertical shifts, things that shift up and down, and horizontal shifts, things that shift left and right. Now we're going to talk about a different type of transformation, and it's called a reflection. So let's say you have a quadratic function that looks something like this, a basic quadratic function. And then if you write that as, say this is f of x, and you write g of x is equal to the opposite of f of x. Well, then that's going to reflect about the x-axis. And what that means is it's just going to flip it upside down. So whatever the shape was, it's just going to be upside down. That's called a reflection, like you're looking in a pool of water and it's reflecting it, okay? So you're taking your table of values, you know, if you had x, f of x, think about that table of values for the parabola. You have, what, 4, 1, 0, 1, 4. That's the orange graph. That's f of x. But then, if you do g of x, you're just taking the opposite of all those outputs. Oops. So you have the points -2, -4, and then -1, -1. It's just flipping it upside down. Okay, so you can think about that more if you want to, but you can use a table of values to do that as well. Okay, if they give you the equation. We also have reflections about the y-axis. So let's say we have a function, let's have the square root function, like that. If this is f of x, okay, nah, that's f of x. I wasn't going to write the square root function out, sorry. Okay, and then you have g of x is equal to f of the opposite of x. Then it's going to reflect this way. So it's going to be going like, it's going to be the same graph, no matter what my drawing looks like, but it's going to be going the other way. It's reflecting about the y-axis, okay? So what's the difference between these? Reflection about the x-axis, you have the negative sign or the opposite sign in front of the function. So you do the function, then you take the opposite of it. Here, the negative sign is before you take the function. So you do the opposite of x and then apply the function. That's the difference, okay? So one is reflection about the x-axis, the other is reflection about the y-axis. So they give us an example here. It's the square root function. So it's just what we were talking about. Okay, so you can graph the, regular one, the common one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, but now we're going to reflect this, and it's going to reflect about, so it's a reflection about the y-axis. Okay, so I'm going to get points here. Each of these points are going to reflect, they're going to go the other direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, and -4, 2, and -9, 3. So it's going to go this way. I forgot to draw the curve on the first one. Okay, so this is f of x, and then this, they called it h of x. Okay, so they can be on the same graph or you can use both graphs. Now you might be wondering, well, what if I wanted to do a table of values? So you might have an idea of what types of values you want to put in. 0, that's not a problem. What's the square root of the opposite of 0? Just 0. Okay, so that's fine. But you can't put in 1 because you'd have the square root of -1 because you're doing the opposite, right? Okay, and that's not going to work. That's not real. So what you can do is you can put in a -1, though. Then you have the square root of the opposite of -1, which is the square root of 1, which you know. Then you could put in the opposite of 4. So you'd have the square root of the opposite of -4, which would be the square root of 4, which would be 2. And then you do the same thing for -9, and you get 3. But where are all of these points? Well, you have to go 0, 0, that's there, -1, 1, -4, 2, and -9, 3. Okay. I forgot I was going to show you what it looks like if it's the other way. So say you have f of x is the square root of x. So we just did that a minute ago. This will help you get familiar with them. There's the common function, f of x, the basic square root function. But now let's say g of x is the opposite of the square root of x. This would be a case where it's going to reflect about the x-axis. Okay? So you think about your table of values when you had, if you had 0, x and g of x, you could put in 0, 1, 4, and 9. That's fine. But the square root of 0, and the opposite of that is going to still be 0. But the opposite of the square root of 1 is going to be negative 1. The opposite of the square root of 4 is going to be negative 2. And the opposite of the square root of 9 is going to be negative 3. Now, how do those points graph? Well, there's 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 2, and 9, negative 3. And so it's going to be going like this. And this would be g of x down here, okay? So it's reflecting about the x-axis. So you don't have to do the table of values. You could just say, oh, they're not up, they're down, and graph it that way with the transformation. But I just wanted to show you both types of reflection.